Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Ruchak Udash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is, This Could Be the Lynchpin That Unravels the Global Economy. And pretty much, I've been watching different videos and pretty much keeping an eye on this whole situation going on over there with Iran, Strait of Hormuz, the gas prices, the price of, things that are gonna steadily go up if they don't get that Strait of Hormuz open. And pretty much, this, because we know that the international bankers, they have a plan, which their motto in the Latin is Ordo ad Chao. For those of you that never heard of Ordo ad Chao, look it up. No, just joking. For those that haven't heard of it, the term Ordo ad Chao means order out of chaos. And pretty much this is how they're destabilizing the world. Now, in the John Todd Confessions, back in, I believe that was 78, 79, 80, somewhere around there, where he actually did this. He was a witch. And he wasn't just any regular witch, just cast a little spell here and there. He was a member of the Council of 13. And as a member of the Council of 13, those are the 13 highest witches, some of the highest witches in the occult that cast spells and, do all type of, enchantments and incantations upon the world. Now, one of the things he mentioned in there, he mentioned a lot of things, but one of the things he mentioned in there was that the international banking family's plan was to implode pretty much the economy, but still be so financially sustained that they will be able to, what's the word I'm looking for? Well, to be so financially stable that they're able to sustain a world collapse, so to speak, in the economy. And that's pretty much what we may be witnessing right now. I want to play this video. The brother from Arrows of Indignation 144 put this up, and then there's another video. But before I do that, because in the title of the lesson, you have the word linchpin. Now, what is a linchpin? A linchpin is a personal thing vital to an enterprise or organization. Also, a linchpin is a pin passed through the end of an axle to keep a wheel in position. So if that linchpin happens to be removed from that axle, it's just a matter of time before that wheel comes off while it's in motion. Okay? AI overview, a linchpin or linchpin. A linchpin or linchpin is a fastener used to prevent wheels, axles, or other components from sliding off a shaft or spindle, commonly used on farm equipment, trailers, and heavy machinery for quick and secure temporary fastening. Its design, often featuring a spring-loaded ring, allows for easy installation and removal without tools. And that's pretty much what they've done with this, with the US dollar. It's easy to control and it's easy to remove. This is why, when they asked JP Morgan what the stock market is going to do, I believe it was JP Morgan they asked, he said it will fluctuate because they control the flow of the currency, whether it goes up or down. It says securing parts like tractor hitches, bearings, and various pivot points against shear forces. And if this pin happens to be removed, like I said, it's just a matter of time before that wheel comes off. And this is where we at in the prophetic timeline of, how the economy is going. All right, so I'm going to play this video here, this individual, what he's saying, because pretty much what he's saying is, I believe it's a fifth of the nations on the planet that are, a part of doing business with America want out. They want other ways, to stabilize their economies, because when the nations agreed to the U.S. dollar being the world reserve currency, of course they wanted to make money, but it was more about having a stable economy that they can rely on, not something that, is topsy-turvy, So listen up, fair use, fair use, fair use. I'm not making any money off of this video. I don't own the copyright to this video. This is just used for educational purposes only. Fair use, fair use, fair use, fair use.
40 nations are currently in talks to basically cut the United States, because of Donald Trump, out of global trade. There are 195 recognized nations/countries on planet Earth. 195. 40 of them, led by Canada, banding together to just cut out the United States. So more than 1/5 of the planet working on a way to not have to deal with the United States anymore. This includes our neighbors to the north, Canada, our neighbors to the south, Mexico. This includes the European Union and the United Kingdom. This includes major Asian countries like Japan.
Now notice he mentioned the UK. He mentioned the EU. That's why the scriptures say that the 10 horns shall hate the whore in Revelation 17.
According to these reports, and again, this is kind of all being, spearheaded by Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, what they're trying to do is avoid all of the tariffs that Donald Trump has put in place on everybody. And then, of course, they have typically had to do reciprocal tariffs, so everything for them gets more expensive because they're dealing with the United States. So all of these nations have gotten together and said, wow, dealing with the United States is expensive and it's costing us business. How do we get around that?
And this also brings to mind how these nations are going to leave, the American, pretty much America, and go into their own countries to pretty much fend for themselves. I'm not sure if that's Jeremiah 50 or 51. You just bear with me, because they're seeing that it makes more sense for them to take their business to their countries than it is to be here, because things are more expensive and everything is predicated upon the movements and the decisions of America, and they're like it's not, they're pretty much there to the point where they don't feel like it's it's worth it anymore to do business with this country, because they're not getting the kickback, and not just the kickback, but also the stability that they were promised. Just like those, Ishmaelite nations over there, like Qatar, the UAE, Kuwait, and such. They thought that once this war would get started, that they would be protected by America, but they're coming to find out that that's not the case. America is, got their whole backing for those small hats. They're not concerned with anyone else. They're only concerned with, the small hats. So everyone else that happens to be, an ally of America or helps America, they're not, really concerned with, I mean, they're seeing that America is not concerned with helping them, so they're going to turn from this place and leave. Not really seeing the scripture. I know it's in either Jeremiah 50 or Jeremiah 51. Let me try something else. Let me try one more. So that's what we're seeing right now, the destabilization of these nations. Let's see. Jeremiah 51:9. Let me see. Yeah, I think that's it. Brother posted it up the water. Jeremiah 51:9. So it says, matter of fact, I'm going to start at 7. Babylon has been a golden cup in the Lord's hand that made all the earth drunken. Yeah, they made the earth drunken through philosophies, and also they made the earth drunken through their economy. Because all nations have to partake. Not only do they have to partake, in the mindset or the governing body of America, for lack of better words, they also have to accept, the monetary system, and also the debaucherous lifestyle that comes along with it. That's why a lot of these leaders of these nations, which more than likely they have them in uncompromising positions, are not, speaking against America or coming against America, because, they what these small hats do is they like to blackmail people, It says the nations have drunken of her wine, therefore the nations are mad. And these nations are pissed off right now at the whore. And they're looking to get out. I said a fourth, but he said a fifth of the nations, of the world, 40, led by who? Canada and Mexico. So don't be surprised, because Trump been talking about, annexing, Canada to America, and also Mexico. Because of Venezuela, Iran, Cuba, Mexico, Canada, Greenland, you see? So don't be surprised if something pops off to where they start a war with Canada or with Mexico, or both. As we speak right now, the people in Cuba pretty much are starving. This fucking devil is, not allowing anything to come through there. People are getting sick because, everything is shut down. They're not able to function. All because this faggot can't get his way. And that's what happens when you have a devil in charge. But you want it so. It says when the wicked beareth rule, the people mourn. Here it is, you got Manasseh down there catching hell. I mean, they're wicked. They done a lot of wicked shit, so the Lord is punishing them too. But at the same time, this devil is doing things that are inhumane. Things that go against every, law in the Geneva Convention, which are the laws of war. And no one is stopping them. Because like the scriptures say, who can make war with the beast? So ain't nobody gonna step up, because they fear that they're gonna get smacked on like Venezuela. They thought they were gonna do the same thing in Iran, but nah, those Iranians, they were ready. Oh, and they say, yeah, we sunk their battleships, inside joke, but we destroyed their navy. Yeah, you did, the ones that you see in the waters, but the Iranians, they showed a video underground where they have all kind of ships for their navy. So they pretty much throwing it in your face. Look, we got backup if we want. We're just not going to put it out there for you to, smash it. So the whole narrative of America winning this war is falling apart. And your man, Macho Taco, he's trying to, get this thing to stop. You started it. You jumped first. You swung first. So they're just defending themselves. And they see where your talks go. His words are smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. You know, because at the end of the day, this devil doesn't play fair. He likes to, you know, let people let their guards down so that he can strike. That's what the scriptures say. Never trust thine enemies. You know, Iran is one of those nations that call America the great Satan. So why would you even trust this devil? You know? It says Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. Howl for her. Take balm for her pain, if so be she may be healed. There's nothing that could heal this place. America has outlived its usefulness. And now it's time for the Lord to judge it. That's why you see all this stuff going on. You would never thought, you know, years ago that, you know, that the nations would get the upper hand over America. That a nation a fifth the size of America could give you so much hell. You know? Now, I'm not sure if Afghanistan is either the same size, bigger, or, you know, how big is Afghanistan to Iran? I hope I asked that. Iran is approximately 2.5 times larger than Afghanistan in total and area. So here it is, Afghanistan, which was a lot smaller than Iran. You were there for 20 years and then accomplished what you wanted to get them to surrender. Now you're in a country that's 2.5 times bigger and well prepared in a very strategic, you know, battlefield with, you know, mountainous regions. And you think you're going to be able to just roll on them like you did to Venezuela? So come on, man. You were in Afghanistan 20 years. So there's nothing that you could do that is going to be able to help you to heal from this wound that you got. You got an incurable wound. It's just like Antiochus Epiphanes. You got the Antiochus Epiphanes wound. That's that worm that is spread under thee. There's a worm that is spread under thee. You know, there's a cancer that's eating you up, and you're trying to hit it with all kind of radiation. You're trying to hit it with all type of, cutting it out, surgeries and all that, and it's not working. It's not helping. You tried chemo. You tried surgery. You tried a raw diet. You tried stop eating meat. You tried a vegetarian diet. You tried a pescatarian diet. You tried a carnivorous diet, and nothing is working. Why? Because it's a incurable wound from the Lord. Matter of fact. So we're witnessing greatness. We're witnessing the Lord, smacking this devil down. Beautiful. Jeremiah 30:12, for thus saith the Lord Yahweh B'Shem Shai, thy bruise is incurable, and thy wound is grievous. Now I'm not sure. This was Jeremiah speaking to Israel, but we know that whatever applied to Israel back then applies to you devils now. For thus saith the Lord, power, thy bruise is incurable, and thy wound is grievous. And what made this wound incurable? The constant breaking of the law, the iniquities and transgressions, So America, that claimed to be a Christian Judeo country, which is not, has outlived their usefulness, Now it's time for the chickens to come home to roost. See, verse 15 says, why criest thou for thine affliction? Why are you crying now? You're only getting back what you dished out. Just like they show videos of the small hats screaming and wailing and want people to feel sorry for them. But you've been doing this shit to the people, the Palestinians. For how long? You laugh at them. You see their calamity, them starving. You see them getting bombed and getting hit, and you rejoice and you laugh. But now that the shoe is on the other foot, now you want people to feel sorry for you. Fuck you. Thy sorrow is incurable for the multitude of thine iniquity. You know, and that's why in Revelation 18, like I said, this applies to Israel, the Israelites, but it applies to America now. In Revelation 18, it says, thine iniquity has reached up to heaven, because thy sins were increased. I have done these things unto thee. So this is why the Lord is bringing this upon you, these calamities, because the Lord is making an inquisition right now. Who they be that are hurt, you know, pretty much with, I'm just merely paraphrasing, with your injurious practices. You know, so the Lord is making an inquisition. And in this inquisition, you're not coming out too good. You know? That's what the Lord said, that in the long run, the Lord is he's gonna be the one to judge you. Because he's not gonna acquit the wicked. You are the wicked. You know? So this is 2 Maccabees 9:5. But the Lord Yahweh Bashem Shai Almighty, the power of Israel, smote him, who? Antiochus, with an incurable and an invisible plague. Okay? So America, you've been struck by a smooth criminal. You're done. There's nothing that you could do to escape from this. You know? And even, let's say you manage to patch this up somehow, it's only going to get worse, because no one trusts you. Your words mean nothing to the world. A man's word is his bond, as they say. And your words mean nothing. They're empty vessels, because you don't honor your word. You're not a man of honor. You're not a moral man like Commodus, even though Commodus was a Jake. All right. So it says, but the Lord Yahweh Bashem Shai, the Almighty, the power of Israel, smote him with an incurable and invisible disease. Or as soon as he had spoken these words, a pain of the bowels that was remediless came upon him, and sore torments of the inner parts. See? So once that midsection is compromised, the rest of the body eventually goes. And that's what the Lord is doing to America. He's hitting them in the midsection. He's hitting them in the digestive tract, you know? And that's why we're reading here, or about to read in Isaiah 14:9. It says, hell from beneath is moved for thee to meet thee at thy coming. Right, because it's your time to go down. Let's go to the NLT. It says, in the place of the dead, there is excitement over your arrival, because you're overdue. The Lord said, what if the Lord, willing to show us his wrath, endured with much long suffering the vessels of wrath fitted to destruction, which he said through the mouth of the Apostle Paul. The Lord is suffering you, but there's a great excitement, and there should be a greater excitement, you know, among the apostles, the bishops, the prophets, the leaders, the true leaders, a great millstone, and brothers that are like-minded, you know, that this devil is going down. And there is. You know, I'm ecstatic, you know. But the thing is, you know, we're still here. We're still in this hell. We're still suffering. But at the end of the day, we have the Comforter, which is the Scriptures, and the Spirit that comes with it, to comfort us and to let us know that although all this is going on and we catching hell, the Lord is going to make a way for us to escape out of it. The Scriptures speak about, you know, when the enemy shall come in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord shall lift up a standard against him. And that's what we're witnessing right now. You know, we're witnessing the downfall of this man, you know, him spiraling out of control because he can't get his way. This is what happens see, Trump is nothing but a spoiled brat kid. He still thinks he's, you know, 6 years old, 7 years old. And, you know, if he can't get his way, then he causes all type of havoc. You know, fuck you, mom, fuck you, dad. You know, like them Edomites. Boy, I wish a motherfucker would. I was in the store one time. I forget what store it was. And my oldest son, you know, he was, you know, young at the time. You know, he was acting a fool. And I told, chill out, man. Right? And this Jake woman, she was watching me. You know, this Judite woman. And then he did something else. I said, look, man, if I got to talk to you again, I'm going to bust your ass all up and down the store. And then she looked at me, she said, not like white people, huh? I said, no. You know, because Esau let their children act a fool. That's what Trump is. He's an overgrown brat. that if he don't get his way, you get fired. You know, he'll act on impulse. He's not a moral man. He's not a man that is a man of wisdom. He is a man of impulse. He is a man of emotions. I heard, you know, I never seen it anywhere. I just heard, you know, that this devil, he'll go to McDonald's. Here it is, you're a billionaire, you going to McDonald's? But you know what shows you that? The movie Kingsman, the one with Samuel L. Jackson. He invited the dude that was like a secretive operative for you know, MI6 or whatever the case is, and he invited him to his mansion for dinner. And what he do? They had this big. I mean, it looked like it was gonna be a gourmet thing. You know, they had the cover, you know, on it, and he pulled it open, and what was it? McDonald's. Here it is. You're a billionaire, and you eating McDonald's. I heard he'll order 2 fillet of fish, take the other fillet of fish and stack it on top of the other, and just eat it like that. That is disgusting. That's demonic. Here it is, and that's why he's shaped like he is. You know, but he's not a moral man. He's a spoiled brat that acts on impulse, acts on emotions, and this is why he's in the quagmire that he's in right now. It says the spirit of world leaders and mighty kings long dead stand up to see you. Right, and this proves, like Elder Pastor brings out on this, that this is a scripture that's dealing with reincarnation. This is another scripture you could use on reincarnation. So let's read it again in the 9th verse. Hell from beneath is moved for thee to meet thee at thy coming. It stirreth up the dead for thee, which are the nations, even all the chief ones of the earth. It hath raised up from their thrones all the kings of the nations. Yeah, because the kings of the nations are coming against you, because they're seeing that the erratic moves that you make do not benefit them, and it doesn't give them the guarantee that they're going to be protected. But they know who's going to be protected. They know who the guarantee is for. The same people that's starting the shit. But as far as these other nations that are the ones really putting it, because, you know, the small heads, they're not putting out anything. If anything, they're parasites. They taking. They're not contributing anything. These other nations are, allowing you to build bases on their land, to make money off of them, so on and so forth. The small heads are sucking you dry, but you got to protect them. Why? Otherwise, they'll release those PDF Steam files, and you'll be cooked. And that's why they were about to pass. Should the Epstein files be released, and the majority of the Senate House said no. It was only like a handful of senators that were willing to do it. So that means that the majority of that cabinet that's in there are all in some type of compromising position, whether it's with a little girl or a little boy or whatever the case is. Total debaucherous, disgusting, demonic. But this is who's running the world, because this is a direct reflection of who's running the world. Let's go to, Ecclesiasticus. That's a direct reflection on who's running the world, because this is what they do. This is how they get off. You got to understand, when the Lord said 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy womb, he meant that. 2 total different characters. Now does Jake do fucked up shit like that? Of course. But as a whole, Jake don't fuck like that. They don't, that didn't come out correct, but they don't rock like that, I should say. But you do have some that are depraved like that. But the majority of Jake they don't roll like that. Just bear with me 1 second. But this, like I said, this is a direct reflection of the people that's actually running the world. This is how they get down. It says Ecclesiasticus 10:1. This is in the apocrypha. For those of you that don't know, the apocrypha is a part of the Bible that was taken out. The word apocrypha means apple, APO, means to send, and krypha, where you get the word crypt or cryptic, means hidden, to send hidden. So pretty much they call this the books the 14 books that are in the intertestamental volume of the Bible, which means it's in between the Old Testament and the New Testament, which they really shouldn't call it that because it is a part of the Old Testament, you know. And it was when the original King James Version Bible was translated, there was also a part of it, you know. And then later on in history they took it out, like the Spanish version of it, they took it out in 1862, which was a man by the name of Dr. Lorenzo Lucena, which Lucena is a feminine way of saying Lucifer. You know, he was the one that was instrumental in removing it out of the Bible. Now, there was a group called the Bible Society Group, right? I believe that's what they were called, the Bible Society Group. If I'm not mistaken, if you brothers remember, because I had brought that information out before, if you remember Biblical Destruction Group, that's what it's called, right? And they were tasked by the Frankists, you know, that infiltrated, you know, different facets of religion, like the Jesuits, to pretty much to destroy the validity of the Bible. And they were together for 50 years, from 1776 to 1826. And then by that time they managed to get the apocrypha out, you know. But there's other information that goes into other people bringing it out, you know, because there's a lot going on. There's a lot of history on that. So Lord's will, if the Spirit allows, I'll tap into that if I remember, you know, to see if I can get some more information and just, you know, narrow it down a little bit more, because you know, it's a lot of information out there. No, but definitely the Spanish Bible, Dr. Lorenzo Lucena in 1869, I believe it was, managed to get the Spanish Apocrypha out of the Reina Valera, Cazadora Reina Valera, which is I believe that's 1564, 69, something like that, which is a Spanish translation, which they said that Spanish translation was the twin of the King James Bible, you know. So it says, Ecclesiastes 10:1, a wise judge will instruct his people, and the government of a prudent man is what? Well ordered. But this place is not well ordered. When you start off with fraud, when you start off with deceit, deception, lies, and all of that, you cannot establish a strong foundation when your foundation is built upon, you know, it's not built solidly. So whatever you build on top of that is going to eventually crumble because it didn't have a solid foundation to be built from. And it's not like you didn't have, you know, examples, because the scriptures, which you claim to believe, they gave you all the instructions you needed. But the only reason why Esau really believed the Bible at one point was because they thought that the Most High looked like them. They thought that Yahushua looked like them. So when they read the Bible, they tried to apply it to themselves. So they, you know, were emboldened to speak about the scriptures because they thought it was talking about them. But it was talking about you, but just not in the manner of fashion you thought, because you were reading the wrong passages. You were reading the passages of the Israelites instead of reading the passages of the Edomites. All right? So it says, as the judge of the people is himself, so are his officers. And that's why from the top, the international bankers, Rothschilds, Rockefellers, DuPonts, the Vanderbilts, you know, the Merovingians, you know, and all the rest of those 13, you know, top 13 banking families, you know, they all do this behind the scenes. That's why they took out Stanley Kubrick when he exposed too much in that movie Eyes Wide Shut. Because people see stuff, but their eyes are wide shut. You know? And then they said that they told him that he had to edit the movie, and he wasn't having it. Because there was 24 minutes of the movie that he didn't want to edit out. So they took him out, and then they took those 24 minutes out. So you could just imagine the madness that was in there, you know? Now, you had the movie Him that came out, which they showed you what goes on behind the scenes, You know, and the thing with the devil, the thing that with the devil is he's very slick. He pretty much has you make the decisions. Like in the movie Him, right? You had Marlon Wayans, that was, you know, pretty much, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Grooming, for lack of better words, is another word for it. Mentoring, you know, the new recruit for the team, right? So they went, you know, they were doing their thing, they were, you know, practicing, and he told them, strip. Huh? Yeah, strip all your clothes off. Took everything off. Then he said, everything. He took all his clothes off, drawers, everything, right? And then I forget what they told him to do, and then he said, man, what's wrong with you, man? Put your clothes back on. But that just shows you that they probe you to see how far they can take you. But why are they doing that? They're doing that because the people that are higher than them, that go up the chain, up that ladder, this is what they do. This is what they feel comfortable doing. So if they're going to rule the world, they're going to rule the world in the way that they feel comfortable in. They're not going to try to rule, you know, a so-called righteous world when they're debaucherous, when they're wicked. That's why it says, as the judge of the people is himself, so are his officers. And there's no place on earth more corrupt than America, Babylon the Great. And this is why the judgment is going to be so severe. And now you're starting to understand even more and more why the Lord is going to destroy this place. Because I remember years ago, both the apostles Gabar and Apostle Rakar would say, you know, that they would look at America and say, damn, man, the Lord's going to destroy all this place. You know, because there's still a lot of beautiful places in America. I've traveled the country. I've seen, you know, I mean, back in 2017, when I was out there with the brothers in LA, you know, they got me a ticket from, no, actually it was the brothers in San Fran got me a ticket, but I didn't want to fly, so I asked them if they could give me a train ticket. So they got me an Amtrak ticket, and the brother Dawada out there in LA dropped me off in Bakersfield at the train station. And I took that train, and man, going up the coast of California, there's a lot of beautiful land there, man. A lot of beautiful land. Which these devils, you know what they do out there, you know, in Sonoma County. You know, which I don't think I went up that far, because it's more up northern. But from Bakersfield to San Fran, it's beautiful land. So they said, man, the Lord's going to destroy all this, you know. Because they, you know, in their spirit, you know, they're looking at it's not the land's fault, it's the devil's fault. But the land is polluted because of the blood that was shed here of the Gadites, the Reubenites, the Issacharites, and all of the Judites, and all the rest of the tribes that they destroyed here. You know? So we're seeing and witnessing a lot of information coming out. The Lord is lifting up the skirt on the whore and showing all of the things that they're doing behind the scenes. So that we can even, I mean, we already knew it's going to be destroyed. We don't have a problem with the Lord destroying this place. But now we're starting to understand even more and more and more why the Lord is going to destroy this place. And it's just like, wow, you know, it's profound. You know, and it's like, we only getting the tip of the iceberg of what's going on behind the scenes. Because you do have pictures when you go back to like the 60s, I think it was, or maybe even before that. You know, let's see, I don't know how to word this. Let's see what comes out. Oh, you know what? Let me type in. See? Now this is newer stuff, but there's actually old footage. All right, you know what? Let me type in. Let me just type in masks. Because, you know, they're going to redirect everything that you do. There you go. This is one of them. I remember this. See? These are actual pictures. it doesn't really say what happens at the Illuminati ball, Business Insider. See, and these are all pictures. Now, what would possess you to put this shit on your head? Look at this man with all kind of faces. An animal head. And do you know this is why they took out Stanley Kubrick? Because in that movie Eyes Wide Shut, they showed you a scene where when you walked in, everybody had on like these gowns, and there was a ritual going on. You have orgies going on, you have all type of stuff going on, and it's just like not even just orgies with man and woman or man and man, woman and woman, but also with children. So that could have been what Stanley Kubrick had in the movie. Could have had some of that stuff in the movie, and they said, nah, this is too much. We're going to take this guy out, and then we're going to remove it. So these are the people that's ruling the world. This is what they do behind the scenes. There's nothing, and this is just, pictures. This is not showing the action, This is way before the action started, Now, I don't know if this is something newer here, because this looks newer, but this is actually an old picture. See, and I forget there's a something about this when somebody's had their head in a bird cage. It represents something, but I can't remember what it is. I'm not sure if Donut, if he brings that out. The reason why they have them in bird cages. You'll see like performances by artists. They'll be like in a bird cage or something like that. It's a representation of something, but I don't remember. See, this good dude looks like a young kid. All kind of shit goes on here. I mean, this. You don't see Jake doing stuff like this, even though you do have some Jakes out there that get down like that. If you want to get up into that life, you have to do stupid shit like this. But these are ritualistic things. This is why the Lord said, now, look at this bitch got a big ass eye. Now, stand up now with thine enchantments. And this demon here has a picture of the Mona Lisa all over, which kind of looks like the Mona Lisa / the Exorcist, and they say that the Mona Lisa was really a man. So this is the shit that goes on in these circles. And this is the shit that, Jake that's up in that world has to do in order for them to really, like I said, this is nothing. This is just and this right here, this is from the movie right here. These two are from the movie Eyes Wide Shut. But this is what actually goes on. So he was exposing all of this. This is Eyes Wide Shut, Eyes Wide Shut. This side on the right is Eyes Wide Shut. This side on the left is the actual, parties. This is what goes on. And then this is just the beginning of the wickedness. So going back, Ecclesiastes 10:2, AI overview, a person with a bird cage on their head generally symbolizes a psychological, social, or emotional state of being trapped, restricted, or isolated, right? Why? Because why are they trapped? How many times you heard some of these rappers say, I sold my soul, for a Happy Meal, different individuals sold their soul, DMX, and they're trapped. They can't get out. Why? Because once you make a deal with the devil, you can't get out. Like the water, bro. So it says, I gotta turn around to be able to see that. I might just switch over this thing. I don't know. Figure it out. It says, as the judge of the people is himself, so are his officers. And what manner of man the ruler of the city is, such are all they that dwell therein. Right. So in order for you to partake in this society, if you want to, rub elbows with the hoi polloi, you have to do rituals. Hoi polloi definition. Hoi polloi refers to the common people, the masses, or ordinary folks. Well, they said that it was supposed to be the high society, You know, but now they're saying it's, you know, it's the common people, the masses. I remember Elder Apostle Kabari used to speak on this. And that's why I don't really use the term hoi polloi, because now they're saying it means the ordinary folk, the common folk, often used in a slightly derogatory or humorous manner to distinguish them from an elite upper class, sophisticated group. What is the, or what are the elite social groups called? Elite social groups often referred to as the upper class or high society. Yes, high society. You know, aristocracy, which they're not aristocracy, because the word aristocracy simply means best rule. You know, are defined by their disproportionate wealth, power, and influence. So what really makes them high society is not because they have class. It's their money that they have, which they stole. Key term, and this is why you have what? A bunch of thieves running the government. You know? And who are they running the government for? Who is their interest of these, you know, senators and politicians? Well, their interest is the interest of the corporations, which are owned by the international bankers. They're the ones running things. That's why you have something called lobbying. It's the corporations, the higher ups, their corporations. They do the lobbying through Congress, and they fund congressmen in order to pass bills that better help their, you know, business ventures. Key terms include their aristocracy, hereditary, noble Reich, new money, if I said that right, old money, inherited wealth, and gentry. They are sometimes described as patricians or plutocracy, right? Because patricians pretty much are the upper class. The word Patrick means noble. It also means father. When you look up the name Patrick, it means noble. It also means father. And then you have plutocracy, which is what? The rule of the rich, which you have also, I'm going to get that real quick and come back, in the book of James, the 5th chapter. Oops. James chapter 5. It says, go to now ye rich men, 5 and 1. Go to now ye rich men, weep and howl for your miseries that shall come upon you. And when you look up the word rich, what do you got? Plosios. Plosios, right, means wealthy, abounding in material resources, you know, by reason of her costliness. I'm going to come back to this, which is in Revelation 18. Revelation 18:19. And they, matter of fact, I'm going to come back here. Plosios, right, which is wealthy, abounding in material resources, metaphorically abounding, abundantly supplied, abounding, rich in Christian virtues and eternal possessions. Yeah. And then you have, let's go, and it goes back to the word Plutos. See, Plutos, riches, plutocracy, ruled by the rich. Right now, let's go forward. Revelation 18, and there's also another one here in Revelation 18, but Revelation 18:19. And they cast dust upon their heads and cried, weeping and wailing, meaning the merchants of the earth, saying, alas, alas, that great city wherein were made rich all that had ships in the sea by reason of her costliness, for in 1 hour is she made desolate. Yeah, because they're going to be crying, not because of this place going down, because this place has been, it's helped them, but it's also been like the bane of their existence, because they're at the mercy of these devils, right? So let's look up the word costliness, and then I want to jump up. So he made rich, pluteo, by reason of a what? Costliness. And that's why you have nations around the world that may live in third world countries, and they can get rich just doing business with America. You know, make the products in their country cheap, and bring them here and sell them at exorbitant prices and get paid. And that's what these nations are doing, leaving. They're evacuating, which, Lord's will, we're going to get back to that. Timiotes, which is preciousness, costliness, and abundance of costly things. metaphorically, worth excellence, right? So it's a what? An abundance of costly things. You go down to, matter of fact, let me go back here. You go down to New York, right? In the wholesale district, right? And let's see, wholesale district, New York. New York, right? You have everything. You have the garment district. You have 7th Avenue is called Fashion, the Fashion Avenue or something like that, Avenue of the Fashion or something like that. It says the primary wholesale district in NYC is the garment district in Midtown Manhattan, roughly 27th to 34th streets between 6th and Broadway, which we spoke on 34th and 7th, and some of the elders also spoke. I've gone out there with them also on 34th and Broadway also. Famous for fabrics, textiles, and apparel. Other key areas include the Flower District, 28th Street, the Diamond District in Midtown, which is owned by you know who, the Small Hats, and the Hunts Point Food Market in the Bronx. Oh, not the Hunts Point. Let's see. Let's show you some images. See, these are all images, and these are all different stores. You could buy perfume. You could buy spices. You could buy, you know, urns. You know, you can buy, you know, figurines. You could buy incense. You could buy oil. You could buy yarn. You could buy fabric. See, all of this. And some of these places they don't sell, you know, to just regular customers. You have to be, you know, they're a wholesaler and they sell to retailers. A retailer buys dozens. They don't buy just one piece. The retailer that buys the dozens, you know, he sells it, you know, one piece or two pieces at a time. See, you know, you have phone covers, you know, phones. You could get anything you want down there. And that's how these devils got rich, these small hats, by setting up, you know, little, all them major stores you see now. Elder Pastor goes into it from time to time. They all started on the street corners, selling on tables. And now they got what? And that's why they attack Jake pretty much when Jake does that, because they don't want Jake to excel. Because they understand how lucrative it could be if there's somebody that just leaves you alone and you go out there and you just, you know, peddle your wares. This is looks like oils. Yep. Now, I'm not sure. I don't think this is Medina, because Medina is a lot more modern now in Brooklyn on Atlantic Street. You know, but these are all oils, essence. And I'm sure if they got that, they're gonna have, you know, incense burners, incense, and all of that. So this is what the place. America is that great city that made all the world rich, right? So Revelation 18:14, it says, "And the fruits that thy soul lusted after are departed from thee, and all things that were dainty and goodly are departed from thee, and thou shalt find them no more at all." Why? Because the Lord's going to destroy this place. Now, two things. You look up the word dainty. That's the king's meat, which you get the word liparos, where you get the word lipos, which is grease. And this is America is a greasy place. That's why you have so many people, you know, with obesity. You know, because everything that you eat turns into fat. Things which pertain to a sumptuous and delicate style of living, like the king's, you know, meat. That's why Daniel refused to eat that. But the scripture, the word we want to get here is the word goodly. Is the word the lampros. I'm lamping. Inside joke. Shining, brilliant, clear, transparent, splendid, magnificent. This is the point here. Splendid things, an example, luxuries or elegancies in dress or style. See? So this place is that luxurious place that all these different nations are getting paid from. And that's why they, you know, act in that fashion. That's why they, you know, that's why the nations want to come here. But now the nations are figuring out that this ain't the move. You know? So we read this already. A matter of fact, verse 3, 2 Ezra 10:3, "An unwise king destroyeth his people." That's what Trump is doing. "But through the prudence of them which are in authority, the city shall be inhabited." Right? Because, you know, this is why the scriptures say, "Woe unto you, you know, land, when your king is not the son of nobles or something along those lines. Why? Because he is not brought up correctly to not think for himself, but more so to make sure that the people are taken care of. See, because a kingdom, is only efficient if the people pretty much are happy, they flourish, they're taken care of. Therefore, the people won't mind taking care of the king. But when the king is a tyrant and put hell on the people, what do you think the people do? They revolt and eventually overthrow the king. So it was the king's job really to be really the minister of the people, although he was royalty and they bowed to him. But he was really supposed to minister to them. The power of the earth is in the hand of the Lord Yahweh Bashem El Shai, and in due time he will set over it one that is profitable, which is Yahweh Shai. That's going to be established on his throne. All right, so going back to Jeremiah 51:8, Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. Howl for her, take balm for her pain, if so be she may be healed. We would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. See? Forsake her and let us go every one into his own country. Right, and there's another one. There's a couple of other ones, but this is one of the main ones. And let us, it said, forsake her. Matter of fact, let's see what the word forsake her means or says in the Hebrew. The word there is izab, to leave, loose, forsake, yeah. Leave it behind, leave the world behind, to depart. And that's what these nations are doing. They're departing. They want out. Out, out. Inside joke. And I'm going to play this back. They want out. Because they're starting to see the rust. They're starting to see, the effects of doing business with this place. It's not worth it anymore. And you got to remember, a lot of these nations already got plenty of money doing business with America. Wham, bam, thank you, man. Peace out. So we would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her, let us go every one to his own country, for her judgment reaches unto heaven and is lifted up even to the skies. So you see that going on right now. So this place is finished. So let's play this video again. Like I said, fair use, fair use, fair use. I don't own the copyrights to this video. I'm just using it for educational purposes. And that's it. Fair use, fair use, fair use, fair use.
40 nations are currently in talks to basically cut the United States, because of Donald Trump, out of global trade. There are 195 recognized nations/countries on planet Earth. 195. 40 of them, led by Canada, banding together to just cut out the United States. So more than 1/5 of the planet working on a way to not have to deal with the United States anymore. This includes our neighbors to the north, Canada, our neighbors to the south, Mexico. This includes the European Union and the United Kingdom. This includes major Asian countries like Japan. According to these reports, and again, this is kind of all being, spearheaded by Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, what they're trying to do is avoid all of the tariffs that Donald Trump has put in place on everybody. And then, of course, they have typically had to do reciprocal tariffs, so everything for them gets more expensive.
Yeah, so we're seeing the buildup of the 10 horns hating the whore, and the nations wanting to leave this place.
Because they're dealing with the United States. So all of these nations have gotten together and said, wow, dealing with the United States is expensive and it's costing us business. How do we get around to that? And their solution is, well, what if we all just trade with each other and not these idiots? And that is currently what they're working on. So instead of relying on the U.S. market to sell their goods, they're going to just start selling to each other and open up new markets that previously hadn't been there. They will grow. They will expand. They will see this financial boom from doing business and trading with everybody in this new coalition, and we, those of us here in the United States, will lose everything. Oh, sure, we'll still have to buy their goods because we depend upon them, and Trump will still have the tariffs, so we'll still pay a higher cost for that. But our goods here in the United States that are already having a hard time selling overseas, just ask any farmer, we will lose those markets. Farmers who are already facing financial ruin, which is exactly what they told Congress about 3 weeks ago, they're going to go under. They will lose everything. Manufacturing here in the United States will go extinct virtually. Because sure, we'll still need to make some things to sell to us here in America, but we're not going to have other countries coming to us knocking on our door saying, hey, can we buy all this stuff from you?
Yeah, because, through the greed of these corporations, they pretty much outsourced everything so that they could get, they could make more money. So if you're not manufacturing things that people want, and you're relying on people, goods to sustain you, then what do they need you for except for just making money? And if they're not making money, then why do they need to be here?
Foreign companies that have invested in the United States, or at least pledged, as Trump says, they'll pull out. They'll go with their new trading partners. They'll move their plants to Canada. Maybe they'll move them to Japan or Europe or anywhere else in Asia or perhaps Mexico. The United States, if this coalition does, do what they're hoping to be able to do.
Yeah, and then pretty much you can't bomb everybody. All right, I want to, highlight some of these comments that the brother Bayan Yasha Allah 144 put up. It says, Delancey Street is a major thoroughfare in Manhattan's Lower East Side. Yeah, and we used to speak out there too. It gets cold as shit during the winter because of that cross breeze from the, what is that? Is that the that harbor there? I can't think of the body of water there. Running from Bowery to the FDR Drive and connecting to the Williamsburg Bridge, historically known as a gritty, bustling bargain shopping hub with Delancey Street. Delancey Street is a major thoroughfare in Manhattan's Lower East Side, running from the Bowery to the FDR Drive and connecting to the Williamsburg Bridge. You had something called the Bowery Boys back in the days. It was a sitcom, I believe it was. Historically known as a gritty, bustling bargain shopping hub with small head roots, it has evolved. See, so they were the ones that pretty much got paid. It has evolved into a diverse area, though it remains a chaotic, traffic-heavy key transportation after Utes, whatever that means, are the Utes. It has evolved into a diverse area, though it remains a chaotic, traffic-heavy key transportation artery. Yeah, because this is pretty much, what America is, especially, New York. That's like one of the top place on the planet Earth for business. But it's not just New York, it's all over. But that's like, you could say, the capital, of commerce, because you have anywhere where you have ships, they're gonna get paid. But some places they just drop off cargo and move it, and that's why you have the trucks coming in, picking it up and going to the different places. All right, so here in Jeremiah 51 in, 9, we would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her and let us go every one into his own country, for her judgment reaches unto heaven and is lifted up even to the skies. Yeah, so this place is about to be destroyed, and we're witnessing the people leaving because they're seeing like that doing business with America is just not profitable anymore like it used to be. So this is another sign of them going down. And they're seeing the corruption and pretty much the corrosion of this place and how it's falling apart. Isaiah 14 And 10, all they shall speak unto thee and say, all they shall speak and say unto thee, art thou also become weak as we? Art thou become like unto us? And this is why the world is watching, while you have a country the fifth of the size of America giving you a hard time, bringing you to your knees, making you saying you're gonna hit them till they scream uncle. Well, they're making you scream uncle. Ain't that some shit? This dude was popping up. This is why, like I said, every time I read Daniel 7 about the horn with the great mouth speaking great things, something along those lines, I always think about Trump, because he exemplifies that. Trump is just a shit-talking, non-thinking individual. Thy pomp is brought down to the grave, and right, because this is what's going to bring you down, that great pride. And the noise of thy vows, which is lousy music that you have today. The worm is spread under thee, and the worms cover thee. Right, so pretty much, there's corrosion here. Your might, it's NLT, your might and power were buried with you. Yeah, you're going to be buried. Bury you, Jack. The sound of the harp is in your palace. The sound of the harp in your palace has ceased. This reminds me of Revelation 18. Now maggots are your sheet and worms your blanket. Right, because this place is totally corroded. This is why it's falling apart. Why? Because the rust of it is a witness against you. Know how wicked this place is. And you cannot establish a kingdom upon the blood of a people that you destroyed, especially the people of the Most High. No, it don't matter what nation it is, but especially the people of the Most High, the apple of the Most High's eyes, the Israelites. Because the Lord got mad at Moab because they burnt the bones of the Edomites in lime. So none of that shit goes unchecked. So the word for worm is ramah, maggot, worm, as cause and sign of decay. And this is what we see going on. It's a sign of decay. And that's why you see everything falling apart. When's the last time you drove down the highway or streets and there was no construction? Everywhere you go, there's some goddamn construction. Some places have been being constructed for the last 20, 30 years, and they still ain't fixed it. You got water main breaks, you got, plumbing problems, you got, sewage breaks, and there's different shit going on. Your roads are fucked up, potholes everywhere, bridges are falling apart. The last time, we did lessons on this, the infrastructure, the grade for the infrastructure of America was a D-, I believe it was. We used to do lessons on that. Let me see. What is the grade for America's infrastructure? The American Society of Civil Engineering, ASCE, 2025 report card awarded America's infrastructure an overall grade of C. Yeah, it went up to a C, the highest grade since they began assessment in 1998. This grade, an improvement from the 2021 C- grade, indicates that while investments are paying off, significant work remains, as several categories still rank in the D range. All right, so D is almost failing. Just barely passing. So the worm is definitely spread under you. The signs of decay are there. That's why everywhere you go, you're seeing, construction. And then when you read down here, it says literally or figuratively. So figuratively is a sign of decay. So let's go. The worm is spread under thee, and the cover thee. Okay, so it's both this worm says walai. Worm, scarlet stuff, crimson. Worm, maggot. To the worm, maggot, the corrosion. Because of the way you got the riches. James 5, it says, "Go to now, ye rich men, weep and howl for your miseries that shall come upon you." Yeah, because you're going to lose everything in an hour. Your riches are corrupted, and your garments moth-eaten. Yeah, the way you got it was wicked. Your gold and silver is cankered. You know, it's rusted. Real gold and real silver doesn't rust. But this is a metaphor, pretty much, for the corruption and how you got it, your fraud. "And the rust of them shall be a witness against you, and shall eat your flesh as it were fire. You have heaped treasure together for the last day." So this is going to cause your destruction. "Behold, the hire of the laborers, which are the workers, who have reaped down your fields, which is of you kept back by fraud, crieth, and the cries of them which have reaped are entered into the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth," you know, which is the Lord of the military, the Lord of the armies. "You have lived in pleasure on the earth and been wanton." And that's, America is an exemplification of the lifestyle of these international bankers. They live in lavishly. "You have nourished your hearts as in the day of slaughter," right? When the day of slaughter, everybody eats to the full. Everything is fresh, right? Abundant. "You have condemned and killed the just, and he does not resist you." Yeah, because we don't have the power to resist. This is why we totally rely on Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. So this situation we see going on right now with these nations and the economy, and the closing of the Strait of Hormuz, and everything that's happening, could just very well be that linchpin. This could be the linchpin that unravels the global economy, and then that's going to lead to what? To them introducing or implementing the new currency of the future, which is the MOTB, which is a microchip. And it doesn't matter how they get the system in place. They just want the system in place. Afterwards, they can make the necessary provisions that they need. This is what you don't understand. People are like, well, if they set up a new system, and they don't put the microchip, then they ain't never gonna do it. No, dummy. All they want to do is get the system in place. Once it's in place, then they'll tweak it how they want. Just like they did with the Federal Reserve. When they passed the bill, they just wanted to get it passed. They had to strip certain things out in order to get it passed, and then afterwards, they got everything in there that they wanted. They just needed it passed. They need the system to go up and be totally on board, online. Then they can add everything else, which is the MOTB, the microchip. This is why you see everything going in that direction. And this is why I believe that the international bankers are causing such a havoc on the economy, to just, the hell with it. We got to have a reset, because America's already done the job. It already put the nations in slavery. Now they want the reset, and the reset is what? Digital, global digital system, which will entail, the new money for the future, which is digital, which is the microchip, which is the mark of the beast. So with that, I pray that you brothers and few sisters have been edified. Till the next time I say, Shalom.